A message from the hospital is waiting for you. Your soulmate hopes you'll see it today. My beloved child. A message from the hospital is waiting for you, and the strangest part is that your soulmate was worried you might never see it. Something happened behind those quiet hospital doors that changed the way they were thinking about you. They had been trying to stay composed, answering questions, watching people move in and out of the room, pretending their mind was somewhere else. But it wasn't. Their thoughts kept returning to one person, you. Then, during one unusually quiet moment, they asked for their phone. Someone nearby thought they wanted to contact family, but your soulmate had something completely different in mind. Their hands hesitated over the screen because there were words they had avoided saying for far too long. And what they finally decided to send wasn't a casual check-in. It carried something they had been hiding from you, something they suddenly feared they might regret leaving unsaid. The message didn't come easily. Your soulmate typed a few words, erased them, started again, and then stopped when someone entered the room. That interruption mattered more than anyone realized, because the person who walked in noticed your name on the screen. For a second, neither of them spoke. Then came a quiet question: are you really going to tell them now? Your soulmate looked away, and that reaction revealed there was history behind this message. Apparently, someone close to them already knew how deeply you still mattered. They knew there had been unfinished feelings, unanswered questions, and one decision your soulmate had been postponing because they were afraid of what might happen afterward. But being in that hospital room had stripped away some of that fear. Suddenly, all those reasons for waiting seemed smaller. Don't skip, because the message itself wasn't the biggest surprise. The real mystery is why your soulmate needed you to see it today. Because after that question, your soulmate finally admitted something that stunned the person beside them. They said they had been thinking about reaching out to you even before coming to the hospital. There had already been a plan forming quietly in their mind, a plan involving you, a conversation, and a truth they wanted to reveal face to face. But something had stopped them at the last moment. Now, staring at that unfinished message, they realized waiting had only made everything heavier. So they added one final sentence. Not dramatic. Not desperate. Just painfully sincere. Then they handed the phone to someone else and gave an unusual instruction: if they couldn't make sure you received the message themselves, this person had to find a way to get it to you. But before anyone could ask why it was so important, your soulmate revealed what they had originally planned to tell you in person, and that is where this hospital message becomes something much bigger than anyone expected. The person beside the bed froze when your soulmate explained what had been planned before the hospital ever entered the picture. This wasn't supposed to happen through a message. Your soulmate had imagined standing in front of you, looking directly into your eyes, and finally answering the question that had quietly remained between you for far too long. They had even rehearsed the first sentence in their head. But every time the moment came close, fear took over, not fear of you, but fear that too much time had passed and you might no longer want the truth. Now that fear felt almost foolish. The hospital room had forced them to recognize how quickly an ordinary day can change, and suddenly protecting their pride didn't seem important anymore. What mattered was whether you knew that their silence had never meant you were forgotten. But there was still one detail they hadn't explained: what exactly had happened before they arrived at the hospital. That answer came when the person holding the phone noticed another unsent draft beneath the message meant for you. It had been written earlier. Much earlier. Your name appeared inside it, followed by words your soulmate apparently never found the courage to send. When asked about it, they became unusually quiet. Then they admitted the draft had been created after a conversation that changed everything. Someone had confronted them about you and asked a question they couldn't escape: if you still care this much, why are you letting them believe you don't? Your soulmate had no convincing answer. They had spent so long believing distance was safer that they never considered what their silence might have looked like from your side. That night, they started writing to you. They almost sent it. Then something happened that made them pull away again. And strangely, the person who caused that hesitation may also be connected to why today's hospital message feels so urgent. Your soulmate finally asked for the phone back and opened the message one more time. Their eyes stayed on your name before they quietly changed a single sentence. The person nearby asked what they had rewritten, but your soulmate wouldn't say. They simply whispered, "They'll understand when they read it." That confidence was surprising because moments earlier they had been terrified of your reaction. Something had shifted. Something huge was waiting for you inside those words. But even more revealing was what your soulmate did immediately afterward. They asked whether anyone had contacted a particular person about their hospital stay. When they learned the answer was no, relief crossed their face. They didn't want that person involved, not yet. Because according to your soulmate, this individual had already interfered once when they tried to reach you. And if they discovered another message was waiting for you today, they might try to stop it again. Then your soulmate finally revealed who that person was. And why they had been so determined to keep the two of you apart. The name your soulmate revealed wasn't someone they had ever expected to distrust. It was a person close enough to know when they were thinking about you, close enough to hear private conversations, and close enough to influence decisions without appearing controlling. For months, this person had insisted that contacting you would only reopen old wounds. They repeatedly told your soulmate that you had moved forward, that you wouldn't welcome a message, and that reaching out would embarrass everyone involved. Your soulmate believed enough of it to remain silent. But recently, one small contradiction changed everything. Someone else casually mentioned that you had never said those things at all. Suddenly, your soulmate began wondering how many decisions had been based on information that wasn't true. And lying in that hospital bed, they realized something unsettling: the distance between you may not have happened naturally. That realization explained why today's message had to reach you without passing through anyone else. Your soulmate didn't want another opinion attached to it. No warning. No interpretation. No one deciding what you should or shouldn't know. They wanted their own words to reach you exactly as they had written them. But there was another reason for the urgency. Before arriving at the hospital, your soulmate had discovered something connected to an older conversation between the two of you, a detail they had misunderstood at the time. They had believed you were pulling away because your feelings had changed. Now they knew there might have been an entirely different explanation. Stay till the end, because this is where their regret became impossible to hide. They looked toward the person beside them and quietly admitted, "If I had known then what I know now, I would never have let them walk away." But what had they finally discovered? The answer was sitting inside their phone. Your soulmate opened an old conversation and scrolled to a message they had overlooked because of everything happening around them back then. This time, they read it differently. There was no rejection hidden inside your words. There was hesitation, confusion, and something that sounded almost like you were waiting for them to make a choice. Your soulmate stared at that message for a long time before comparing it with what they had been told afterward. The stories didn't match. Not even close. And suddenly, the hospital message waiting for you became more than an emotional confession, it became an attempt to correct something that should have been corrected long ago. Your soulmate added another line, took a breath, and finally pressed send. But seconds later, the phone showed something neither person in that room expected, because the message didn't appear to reach you at all. For several seconds, your soulmate simply stared at the screen, waiting for the message to change from pending to delivered. It didn't. They checked the connection, refreshed the screen, and tried once more, but the same strange silence remained. That was when their expression changed. This wasn't disappointment anymore. It was concern. The person beside them suggested there could be an ordinary explanation, a weak signal, an old number, perhaps even a temporary technical problem. But your soulmate remembered something that made those possibilities feel less convincing. The last time they had tried reaching you directly, something similar had happened. A message disappeared into silence, and afterward they were told you had chosen not to respond. Back then, they accepted that explanation. Today, they weren't willing to accept anything without knowing for themselves. So your soulmate made a decision nobody in that room expected. They asked the person beside them to write down the message exactly as it appeared on the phone. Every sentence. Every word. Nothing changed. Then they gave them another way to reach you. One that had nothing to do with the person who had interfered before. This was no longer about getting an immediate answer. Your soulmate only wanted certainty that you would finally have the chance to read what they had been trying to say. And buried inside those words was the sentence they had rewritten moments earlier, "I need you to know why I stayed away." That single line changed the entire meaning of the message. Because your soulmate wasn't simply reaching out from a hospital room to say they missed you. They were preparing to explain a decision that had hurt both of you, and the truth behind that decision involved something you were never supposed to discover. Then came the detail that made the room fall completely quiet. Your soulmate admitted that shortly before everything went wrong between you, they had received something that appeared to come from you. It looked convincing enough that they never questioned it. The words made them believe you wanted distance, that continuing the connection would only make things worse, and that the kindest thing they could do was disappear without another conversation. But after comparing that old message with your actual conversations, they had noticed a difference they couldn't ignore. The wording didn't sound like you. One personal detail was wrong. And there was something else. The timing placed the message at a moment when your soulmate now had reason to believe you couldn't possibly have sent it. They looked toward the person holding the handwritten hospital message and whispered, "I think someone answered for them." But when they revealed what was inside that old message, an even more disturbing clue pointed toward exactly who may have written it. The clue was hidden in a phrase your soulmate had heard only one other person use. At the time, it seemed meaningless. A particular way of describing your connection as something that needed to end quietly before it became complicated. But now those exact words were sitting inside the message supposedly sent by you. Your soulmate read the sentence again, slower this time, and remembered hearing that same expression during a private conversation with the person who had repeatedly discouraged them from contacting you. Suddenly, the pieces began connecting in a way they desperately wished they didn't. This person had known when your soulmate was vulnerable. They had known about the uncertainty between you. More importantly, they had known exactly what your soulmate feared hearing from you. But recognizing the phrase still wasn't proof, and your soulmate refused to accuse anyone without something stronger. That was when the person beside the hospital bed noticed a detail neither of them had considered. The old message had arrived during a very specific window of time, and your soulmate could remember exactly where they had been that evening. They also remembered who had access to their phone during part of it. Their face changed as the memory returned. There had been a gathering, a brief distraction, and several minutes when the phone had been left unattended. Later that night, the message appeared, and your soulmate assumed it had come directly from you. But now another possibility was impossible to ignore. Someone may not have needed access to your phone at all. They only needed enough knowledge about your relationship to create something believable. Your soulmate whispered that there had been details in the message only a small number of people knew. That narrowed everything down. And suddenly, their reason for wanting you to receive today's hospital message became painfully clear. They needed you to confirm whether those words had ever been yours. But before they could decide what to do next, the person helping them received a response through the alternate route they had used to get the hospital message to you. It wasn't from you. It came from someone who recognized your name and said something unexpected. There had been another attempt to contact your soulmate long ago, one they apparently never knew about. Your soulmate sat forward despite being told to rest. When? They asked immediately. The date was given, and the room went silent again. It was only days after the message that had convinced your soulmate to walk away. That meant while they believed you wanted them gone, someone may have been trying to tell them the exact opposite. Don't skip, because what happened next changed the entire timeline. The person on the other end said there was still a record of that old attempt. And it contained one sentence meant specifically for your soulmate that they had never seen before. That unseen sentence carried a completely different emotion from the message your soulmate had believed for so long. It wasn't cold. It wasn't asking for distance. It was asking for clarity. The record showed that someone had tried to reach your soulmate with words that essentially said there had been a misunderstanding and that one honest conversation could still change everything. Your soulmate read the details twice, then closed their eyes as the weight of those lost days finally settled over them. They had spent all this time believing silence was what you wanted, while there had apparently been an attempt to break that silence almost immediately. Even the person beside the hospital bed didn't know what to say. But your soulmate noticed something else in the record, a detail showing that the attempt hadn't simply gone unanswered. Someone had acknowledged receiving it. That changed everything. If the record was accurate, the message had reached somewhere connected to your soulmate, yet they had never personally seen it. They began retracing those days carefully. Who had been around? Who had offered to handle things while emotions were high? Who kept telling them there was nothing left to discuss? One person appeared in every memory. The same person connected to that familiar phrase. The same person who had insisted you were finished with them. Your soulmate's voice became quiet when they finally said, "They knew I was waiting." Suddenly, the interference no longer looked like one impulsive act. It looked like a pattern of small decisions designed to keep two people from comparing what they had actually said. And there was one simple reason that pattern had worked for so long: neither of you had been speaking directly to the other. Then your soulmate did something that surprised everyone. Instead of immediately confronting the person they suspected, they asked for the hospital message to be changed one final time. They didn't add accusations. They didn't mention names. They added a question only you could answer, something connected to a private moment between the two of you that nobody else should have known. If the message reached you and the answer came back correctly, your soulmate would finally have the certainty they had been missing. But as the person beside them prepared to send the updated version through another route, your soulmate stopped them. A new notification had appeared on the phone. This time, it wasn't pending. It wasn't from the suspected person either. It was a response connected directly to the hospital message, and the first few words were enough to make your soulmate's hands tremble, because someone had finally confirmed that the message had reached you. For the first time since entering that hospital room, your soulmate looked genuinely relieved. The confirmation was simple: the message had reached the right place and had not passed through the person they feared might interfere again. But relief quickly turned into nervous anticipation. Now there was nothing left between you and their truth. No messenger changing the meaning. No outside voice explaining what you supposedly felt. No convenient misunderstanding protecting them from the possibility of hearing your real answer. Your soulmate stared at the screen, wondering whether you were reading those words at that exact moment. Then they whispered something the person beside them almost missed: "I don't need them to forgive me today. I just need them to finally know what actually happened." And that was when the real purpose of the hospital message began to surface. Your soulmate had included more than an explanation about the past. Near the end was a confession they had originally planned to make face-to-face. They admitted that after the two of you became distant, they never truly stopped looking for signs that the door between you might still be open. Certain dates remained in their memory. Certain places still reminded them of conversations with you. They even kept something small connected to a promise the two of you once discussed, although they had told everyone around them they had moved on. But the most important confession came afterward. Your soulmate revealed that before the hospital visit, they had already made a decision: they were going to contact you regardless of what anyone else thought. The hospital hadn't created their feelings. It had simply removed their last excuse for waiting. Something huge is waiting for you, because that decision came with a second promise they hadn't told anyone about. They promised themselves that if you answered, even if your answer was difficult, they would finally tell you everything directly. No more disappearing because somebody claimed to know what you wanted. No more allowing family, friends, fear, or pride to speak on either person's behalf. Your soulmate wanted one honest conversation where you could ask the questions that had been left unanswered. But just as they finished explaining this, another notification appeared. Everyone expected it to be your response. Your soulmate reached for the phone immediately, then stopped when they saw the name. It was the person they suspected had interfered before. Somehow, that person had learned a message had been sent from the hospital, and their first words weren't asking whether your soulmate was okay. They asked on